Good afternoon or good morning for those of our friends on the West Coast of the United States. My name is Dr. Dustin Sachs, Chief Technologist and Senior Director of Programming here at the Cyber Risk Collaborative, and I'm really excited for today's session. Today is the second of our leadership virtual member briefings, the new series that we've started here in 2025 at the Cyber Risk Collaborative, really based on the feedback that you all, our members, gave us in the topics you wanted to hear about. So today is a really exciting topic. Not only should we acknowledge that it's International Women's Month, and we want to certainly make acknowledgement of that, but the topic that we're going to discuss today is one that has quite candidly been in the news a lot lately, and is one that a lot of people are grappling with, and therefore we feel that it's important, and you all have asked us to talk about these topics. So today we're going to be talking about the topic of organizational culture as a key to cybersecurity success. And we're going to talk about everything from, gender diversity to racial diversity to neurodiversity, all of the things that are really important and really make a well-rounded security team. And as we'll talk about, are really even almost foundational to doing business in a global economy. So I'm really excited to have our guests here today. Before I introduce them, though, for those of you who are joining us for the first time, I wanted to introduce the Cyber Risk Collaborative briefly to you. The Cyber Risk Collaborative is our member community here at Cyber Risk Alliance. We are here to not only accelerate career development, but offer decision support, help security teams do the job of security easier, better, faster, quicker, cheaper. We do this in a vendor and analyst-free environment. We're here to listen to what you want, what you need, and then work with our community to develop the resources and tools and items that you need, not just the guidance, but the actual tools to do your job better. We also provide strategic intelligence based on our 3.2 million member database, as well as helping our community and our members to network better and to build their own personal brands. And we do this through a 24/7 access to your peers, to tools, to solutions, to conversations, to resources. And we really want today to be an interactive conversation. I encourage everybody to talk in the chat, add questions in the Q&A. For those of you who may be joining us for the first time, that's going to be in the center of your screen. You're going to see a bunch of icons. One of the ones on the far left, that's your chat, the chat function. The button right next to it is the Q&A. Please submit your questions. Please submit, talk about these topics in the chat. Our mission here again at the Cyber Risk Collaborative is really to develop leaders, to develop the workforce, to work with you to develop and provide CISO and security team driven tools. They're not tools that our team of analysts create. It's tools that you tell us you need, that you talk about what it is you need, that we work as a community to develop, and then that we share with the community. So it's all about peer collaboration. It's all about finding the people who've done it before or the people who are doing it now and doing it together as opposed to trying to go it alone. So shifting to our topic today, organizational culture as a key to cybersecurity success. I'm super excited to introduce our panel today, and I'm going to let them introduce themselves because they'll do a much better job than me taking the 2 or 3 sentences I've got about them. And the first person I want to introduce is Barbie Mooneyhan, who is the newly minted CISO at Uplight. Congratulations, Barbie, and introduce yourself maybe to the audience, please.
Sure. So Barbie Mooneyhan, CISO of Uplight. And I guess a little bit about my background is that I've been in IT and generally healthcare before, but now newly into the more energy sector for the last 20 plus years. And then I've been in security for over 7 and developed many programs from a security, privacy, and an IT functionality. So I'm looking forward to this conversation. And Nicole, I'll pass it over to you.
Yes, please, Nicole. And then I'm very pleased to introduce as well Nicole Ford, multi-time CISO. And Nicole, would you please introduce yourself?
Yes, I'm Nicole Ford. I am a 4-time CISO. I've been the CISO of several different organizations, a couple of them Baxter Healthcare and Carrier Global Corporation. Really excited to be here. I've been in cybersecurity and technology for 20 plus years. I'll say plus because it's been a very long time. And I've built cybersecurity programs across the board from the beginning to the end. I've gotten an opportunity to take companies public and do some really fantastic and great things and work with great teams and groups of people to really advance cybersecurity at the organization I was serving, as well as the community.
Well, it's great to have both of you here. And, starting out up front, the fact that that we've got two very successful, very influential female CISOs here to talk about culture in an industry that has predominantly been a largely white male industry is certainly a really big testament, not only to the community we have at the Cyber Risk Collaborative, but to the role that diversity and inclusion and having different perspectives truly plays. One of the things that we look at in security oftentimes in the first place that we always go is technology. We look at our organizations and we say, in order to have a resilient organization, I've got to have the best technology out there. Certainly for me, one of the areas that I've been looking at and that I looked at as part of my doctorate was the human side of it. What role do the humans play in this whole process? And what role does leadership does the organization's culture, does all of this play in building a truly resilient organization? So really, to start the conversation today, I'd love to hear from both of you, starting with you, Barbie, about how does an organization's culture really play a role in the cybersecurity resilience?
Cybersecurity resilience itself. Yeah, I think it's a really good topic to start with because I think it's going to open up a lot more throughout this process. But one, if we're looking at a top-down approach of having the conversations at the executive level, having the conversations at the senior leadership level, when there's an understanding around how the business is impacted by the culture that you're having and then by security practices, I think that's one of the biggest influences that we have when we talk business terms instead of the business or instead of security term, like to your point, instead of talking about we have this technology, this tool stack, and it scans the things and here's a bunch of vulnerabilities and we need to go fix those things. Instead, we're looking at it as, hey, let's make informed decisions about what type of role do we want to play in the industry that we are in and what type of risks are we willing to take on behalf of our partners and our clients and our users and the people at the end of the line of the services and products that we provide. And that is a lot more, to your point, it is a lot more than just what technology we can turn on. It's a lot more than antiviruses. It's more about conversations. And it's more about creating business relationships. And it's more about enhancing your teams to be able to bring different perspectives. I mean, I know that's kind of a big piece of what we're going to be talking about today, is bringing those different perspectives into the conversation. Because when we're talking to our engineers, they're building products, it's all about innovation. They want to move forward. Well, then we have to kind of say, like, slow down, right? We are the seat belts of the car. We want to go faster, but we also need to be able to protect ourselves, our company, and we need to be able to protect the people that rely on us for the products and services that we provide. So yeah, that's a little bit about just the really high, more not in depth just yet, but a little bit more high for me. Yeah.
So Nicole, in the prep for this, you brought up a really interesting point that I think is worth bringing up here, especially since kind of Barbie really brought it into the conversation as well. But there's a real practical reason why you would want to have a diverse workforce when it comes to dealing with your customer base. Can you tell us what that practical reason is, why that you might want to why you need to have a diverse workforce, from just the forget about it looks good, it's marketable, we can get awards for diversity. There's a real practical reason.
So, and I remember this conversation. Remember, sometimes I say great things and I can't remember what I said, but in this instance, it really matters that your cybersecurity team, your internal organization, mirrors and reflects your employees, or your customers. Like, your customers matter, right? And if the fact that you have taken the time to make sure that you have the right team, right, that reflects that diversity is really important. And so that's kind of how I think about it. Like, when we're serving customers or providing services to customers, we want to make sure that we have a diverse group of people that bring different, perspectives and mindsets and views to the table, so that we're providing the right level of service or providing the right type of products that really reflect our customers. And I think it's important. I will say something that I think is super interesting, and that is, you've heard, like, culture eats strategy for breakfast or lunch. You've heard that, right? So I use the term that culture eats cybersecurity for breakfast, right? So your culture matters, right? Making sure that you are driving a security first mindset is super important. It makes or breaks a cybersecurity program a lot of times, right? And we talk about having top-down support, but it's more than that. Does your culture really look at cybersecurity as an enabler? And do you have a security first culture that's driving a security first mindset? And in today's day and age, it takes everyone, right? Cybersecurity is everyone's responsibility. And, we've often heard that, said that, but again, we have to ensure that that combination of obviously from the CEO down, they really have and believe in cybersecurity, and that it is an enabler for the business, and that we have used those two kind of tenets to drive success into our cybersecurity program, which ultimately supports our customer base.
Absolutely. And, I think, thinking back as well to that conversation, I think you and I kind of chuckled a little bit, because if we were talking about, I'm doing business in Latin America and I don't have a Spanish speaker on the team, you'd go, that's crazy. Like, why wouldn't you? So we don't even think, like, that's a non-negotiable. You've got to have somebody who speaks the language. So why don't you have, so this idea that you wouldn't have a workforce that mirrors visually, experience wise, all of the elements of your customer base seems kind of silly as well. And I'll open this up to both of you. And but what are some of the biggest challenges we have from a cultural standpoint, in in implementing security strategies? Where's the biggest where are the biggest, areas that we need to be focusing on?
I'll take the lead on this
Please.
one. I think some of the challenge is, again, going back to executive support, right? And I think one of the things that's always helped me as a CISO is getting allies on the business to really be the champions and support my cyber program. Just like when you think about like ERGs or employee resource groups having a champion, right, or an ally, I think it's important for cyber as well. It hasn't been something that we've leaned into as much, but I've seen more success when we get others to be a mouthpiece and support the work that we do. And we can tie it into real world examples that impact our business every day, right? So it's not really just that this site went down, right, because of a DDoS or some sort of malicious attack, but that it impacted our customers, right? And so having somebody from the business talk about that impact in terms of revenue, or this downtime didn't allow us to provide a critical service, really resonates with employees. So where we could really leverage or get another perspective, tie that in with our cybersecurity perspective, I think it really helps drive home some of what is necessary for the cyber team. The other thing is, again, it's level of investment that's made, I think is very important, right? So just across the bat, when you think about like resourcing and level of investment, it has to be aligned with what type of program the organization expects from the cybersecurity team and the CISO. And I think it's really important to right size that and to really fight to get the resources necessary to do the work, not just align with what's been provided. And, that's an age-old problem that we've all had is, what level of investment is commensurate? Do we have executive support, right? And I think another piece is do you have those champions, right? And so as I talk about having allies, it's also having the right champions within our business to help kind of amplify the messaging that I think is a huge barrier and something that a CISO has to spend the time to create in order to drive success throughout the organization.
And so, Barbie, and Adriana Winkler put in the chat, and I think it's, I want to get your take on this, and I'm going to expand it a little bit. But she talks about the fact that, she's worked across many countries, and it baffles her and certainly baffles all of us. I think that we oftentimes hear if it works in this country, if it works in the US, if it works here, it's going to work everywhere else. So we'll just apply it everywhere else. And we know that that's not accurate. But even beyond that, it's, if it works with this group within the organization, this works culturally for the HR department, so it's going to work for the legal department. How do we balance, how do we create a truly holistic approach to our culture, to organizational culture, when you've got to deal with, or when that considers all of these differing perspectives?
No, that's a really good question as well. So just as far as the challenges themselves, I think just to add on is one of the number one challenges is that it's not that people don't want to do security. It's not that they don't want to build the processes in. Very rarely do you ever run into somebody that they're just like, I don't want to secure the things, right? It is more about either a understanding of the impact of the business. Nicole, you were talking about the impact focus, right? To be able to understand the impact of the business and be able to speak that back to them. But it's also about resource management and being able to come to the table and understand what prioritization for the business is. And so when you go and you say, I have these things that need to be done along with your workload, when we phrase it as there's all of this work that needs to go be fixed, instead of there are requirements that need to be done to complete your job properly. Those are two very different conversations. There's a quality of work conversation, and we educate to allow to understand the quality of work and how security fits into the quality of work to our teams. But we also have to come to the table to understand what that means and how that influences the teams that we're asking to do those things, and what quality means to them, and have those conversations, because it's always going to come back to prioritization of the team and resources of the team. Very, very rarely have you ever went to a team, like show of hands, have we ever went to a team or had a team that were just like, you know what? I'm staffed. I can take extra work on. This is great. It's always going to be, nope, I have to ship this thing out the door. This is what we're working on this week. I have a backlog of things that already need to be done. And so when we start understanding that different teams are going to work in different ways, and I think that's coming back to the point of, well, if it works for one department, it's going to work for all of them. If it works in our country, it's going to work in other countries, which is very, very, very different, very, very different realities for us, is that it is up to us to have those conversations. It is up to us to understand the business, because we are asking for compliance, right? We are asking for compliance. And if we are ignorant to how the business functions, and we are ignorant to how the teams are able to meet those compliance requirements, it's going to hurt everybody in the long run. And we also have to understand how the team produces their work. And we can only do that by sitting down and having conversations and building relationships. And that's how you get, Nicole, to your point, champions and buy-ins, because they understand, if we don't do this thing, this is the risk that we're taking a look at from the company perspective, and this is what could happen. But we're also understanding the different personalities in the different departments. We're understanding, if you brought up the world, right? If it works in the US, it works other places. No, there's a whole cultural difference, right? And when we work with people living in other countries or from other countries, if you are a United States-based person, a newsflash for you, if you haven't worked with people outside of the United States, there's whole cultural differences that you have to take into account, and that you have to understand, and that you have to bring to the conversations. And it's okay, right? But it is of our charge to understand those things in the business, and to be able to ask questions and move things together with our partners in the business. At the end of the day, the business has to function.
Absolutely. And to your point, and then yeah, Nicole, I definitely, okay. But to your point, obviously if you've never worked with people outside the US, don't plan anything in August if you want them to be involved. They're going to be gone. They're on vacation. And when they're on vacation, they're on vacation. They are gone. Yep. The other thing is, I'll issue the spoiler alert. Security teams do not have unlimited budgets. Apparently we do have, limited budgets that, run out, and limited resources. So, if there is a team that's out there that's saying we've got plenty of budget and we're stacked with employees, please reach out, because there are other organizations within the community that would love to borrow some of your staff for a little bit to make their team better. What's that?
I said, yeah, can I have your budget and maybe half of one of your employees, just for time, just for them. It's okay. Nicole,
coming to you, because I know.
Yeah, I just want to go back to. I want to go back to my point, right, of what we discussed before. This is exactly why you need a diverse team, right? Because those nuances and traditions and practices, if you run a global team, you have a global team of people who understand what works in one geography that may not work in another geography, right? That's those differences that I think makes a global team really unique, in that we can provide services or products based on specific geographies, because we know those geographies well and what works.
Absolutely. So shifting a little bit,
So sorry.
Please go ahead.
Yep, I'm just going to interrupt, because that's my way.
Please, go for it.
I love that you said that, because I think it's important that when we have representation on our teams, we can see things in different ways that we ourselves may not be able to see or understand because we do not have the historical context. But it is also our charge as leaders to be able to have those conversations too. And then whenever we're talking to other people, ask questions like, what would you prefer your communication style to be? How are you okay with this? Creating a safe environment. I know this is a later topic. I'm so sorry. I'm like skipping ahead, but I think it's very prevalent right now in the diverse conversation of creating diverse teams is creating the environment that you can be diverse in your team. You don't have to like form a norm that you like. I remember whenever I first started in IT, I formed the norm of the not of like other girls girl, right? Like, and not that that's anything wrong with that, naturally that, but some of those negative ramifications of not the other girl's girl, right, definitely negatively impacted me in the beginning because I felt a social pressure to push to a norm that was not female. It was very male dominated. And so creating environments that are safe for you to be able to be you and represent you, it is so critically important having that representation while also being the leader that pulls out of the person that authenticity is kind of clutch to being able to even tap into your diverse team.
Absolutely.
Sorry.
And before we move to the topic that
Sorry,
Barbie, I know you and I really want to move to for sure. And I know, Nicole, you want to join in as well on this one. How can organizations leverage, what are some of the practical ways you've seen organizations leverage diversity to enhance security decision making? And the example I'll give is this is one for me, kind of, it's not even a, highly controversial, but it was one where the decision would have been different had we not had somebody on the team who could like illuminate this. But at the last organization I was at, Global Fuel Services Company, there was a request that came from some of our Asia Pacific employees to say, can we use WhatsApp on our phones? And initially in the US, the statement was, no, you may not use WhatsApp, period. It's like, not allowed. The decision we were going to make was to deny the use of WhatsApp until somebody from our Asia Pacific team educated us that that's the only way they can safely communicate in that region without risks of government interference. And for us, it was like, oh, well, we didn't even think about that because we're thinking about business impacts. We didn't even think about the implications and why they need to use an app like that because they can't use traditional items, or why, we were telling them they can't use certain mobile device types because of the fact that they're government sanctioned. And we had to come up with different solutions that we would not have come up with had we not had that diverse team. How have each of you seen situations where, if it hadn't been for the diversity of the team, a decision may have been made differently?
Barbie, do you want to go first?
No, I'm gonna defer the question to you, and then I'll tag into it. Yep.
I mean, I've had a very similar situation as you, Dustin. I think going over to Asia and recognizing that they used WeChat. So this is even, more recent, right? So WhatsApp, and then there was WeChat. And I didn't understand until I actually went to Asia how, in fact, going to China, how much they used WeChat. So they use WeChat for, they buy everything on WeChat. They use it for everything. So imagine almost like an Amazon kind of for the US, right? We use Amazon for a lot, right? But WeChat is even more than that, right? Had I not gone over there and had a conversation with the Asia team, I would not have understood the extent of how much they used it and how if I, set a policy where that's no longer allowed, how that would almost cripple that business there, because they sell items and products on chat and things that I did not realize, because we use very traditional methods in the US, would have impacted in a negative way one of our businesses. So I use that same example because it's pretty relevant. I can tell you that in another example, as we think about, and this is just so basic, I didn't understand, like if you are targeting security leaders in Asia, the CISO role, they don't always have CISOs, right? They have security leaders. And so, we have a term here, and we know it as the Chief Information Security Officer. It's that way over in Europe, but in Asia, it's a security leader, and that security leader has multiple responsibilities, right? They have not advanced in the same way that we have, right? Well, there's a different cultural aspect to what do we call a security leader over in Asia versus what we call a security leader here in the U.S. and the Americas, as well as in EMEA.
Absolutely. Barbie, any thoughts from your side?
I'm gonna take it in a little bit of a different direction, just because the diversity of thought as well in the conversation. So when I am working towards either building out a team or working towards understanding how to accomplish all of the things the security needs accomplished in a given day, week, quarter/year, there's a long laundry list of different things that need to be done. And it has to be approached in different ways, from policy review, right, to log reviews, to doing technical components and incident response, to building relationships. And all of those take different personality types to want to do those things. And so I know we're going to building back to kind of that dynamic, that diversity within our teams and why it's valuable. But I think that's the example that I would probably have. I'm not going to give it a direct example, but as a holistic team development, and then how we fit into other teams and how they work together with us. I'm looking for individuals that fit and want to do the role based on what they are passionate about. And you are going to have diversity of thought. People are going to want to do data-driven things. People are going to want to do highly technical things. People are going to want to do people things. And some people want to do all of those things. And some people want to do none of those things. And they just want to be a cog in a wheel, right? Some of them want to be leaders. And so having different perspectives coming together for that is, you can't have a good security department and do all of these different domains and be able to speak out and be able to have good business relationships without having variance and varied and diverse backgrounds.
Absolutely. And that kind of sets up really nicely the next part and kind of what we'll talk about before Q&A. And again, if anyone's got questions, anyone wants to add questions, please submit those. But let's address what I'll call the elephant in the room. Obviously, right now we're seeing in the news and in kind of conversation an assault on diversity and an assault on different types of diversity. And one of the ones that I know, Barbie, you and I spent a lot of time talking about is the concept of neurodiversity. It's something obviously I've been very vocal about my experiences with. And you brought up a really interesting point, which is traditionally we've looked at neurodiversities as them being a hindrance or a problem or limitations or things. But you bring up a really interesting point, which is cybersecurity, for example. I spent 6 months as a SOC analyst. You need somebody who is willing to sit there and just stare at a screen for 6 or 8 hours and look for patterns. And not everyone, most people are not going to want to do that. Now, certain neurodiversities, that is an asset. Certain things, that diversity of thought, certain things, certain work environments are more conducive for certain roles. When I was doing forensic investigations early in my career, I needed to be in a quiet room by myself, just working on a screen, not interrupted, headphones on. It was completely acceptable, but that was also where I was most comfortable. So how can you help those leaders? Because I've spent a lot of time recently with many people that I work with and that I know, kind of helping them understand things that a lot of people just don't understand. And it's not that they're ignorant to it. It's not that they don't want to know. It's that it's a hard concept to understand. So explain a little bit to the people who may not fully grasp it, why this idea of neurodivergence, why this idea of diversity of thought requires you to kind of put yourself in a bit of an uncomfortable position, but to really truly learn about your employees.
Oh, I mean, you did an amazing job answering that for me. I think you just lined it all up to the answer. But I do no, neurodiversity is like you said, historically, and this has been changing slightly in topic over the last about 5 years as we have seen more conversations. You know, at Health ISAC, we had multiple neurodivergent and conversations for like a DEI perspective, and how do we work together with neurotypical, which I'm neurodivergent, right? How do we work together with neurotypical individuals to like get most value out of it? And I think a lot of us that are finding out that we're neurodivergent, we didn't know we were. So we didn't know that there was a difference in the way that we processed and the way that we thought, and why everybody looked at us like we were crazy when we're like, we do the things at the end of the day. Like we do the thing 2 minutes before it's deadlined, because that's what dopamine isn't hitting, and we're not going to get the dopamine until it's due. And then in the 3 minutes before it's due, it's a crazy mess. And then we hit the deadline and we're like, yeah. And then all of a sudden, you know, everything in our brain just like fireworks off. Right. And that's some of the things that we understand now for neurodivergent individuals, is that, like, for me, I'm great in a pinch. I'm great at the deadline, at the drop of the hat of like, oh my God, we got to get this across the border right now. I'm great at that, but I'm not so great at you giving me something 6 months ago and then it falls off my calendar because it's not in my face. And then all of a sudden, 2 weeks before it's due, you're like, where is this at? And I'm like, oh my God. So being able to sit down and have the conversation, and everybody's different, right? And that's another thing that we're noticing and that we're realizing, is that even within the neurodivergent field, there is a lot of different ways that we represent when we come to the table, especially the research done between the way that women represent versus how men represent their neurodivergency. There's just a lot of things to consider. And so I find it best practice, and I know that I talk about this a lot, and I guess I talk to people a lot, right? Like, get to know people and ask them what their preference is, and ask them how do they thrive and how do they survive, right? Because if we understand how they thrive, then we understand the situations that we can put them in to make them most comfortable and make them most successful. And we can understand when they survive, we can understand if we are putting them to challenges, how we can help support them through those challenges. And each person's going to be different, whether it's something where you have the object permanence issue, where if it's not in front of your face, you just don't understand it. It's not there anymore. Like, how many times do people buy cheese because it ended up at the bottom of the drawer, but you have 8 packs of cheese because you never opened the drawer because you have object permanence issue? Like, that's a thing. And so just talking to your team members and creating a safe space for them to be able to tell you the ways that they prefer to be managed. Some people require a lot of hands-on. Some people require very hands-off. And this is not just neurodivergent, right? This is neurotypical as well. Getting to know the person behind the worker is so important in the situation of, like you said, I guess, creating a safe environment for individuals
and it's important. And obviously it's as important as understanding, do you know about network security? Like, what are your technical skills? You got to know the social side. That's what we call the soft skills side, because that's how you're going to create the most cohesive team that you can have. And, again, I love that you brought up, I certainly, and I've been vocal, I didn't learn about my true diagnosis until I was 38 years old. And for me, it was very eye-opening. But what was really interesting, and the point I want to make right now here as well, and I'd love, Barbie, before we go to Nicole, Barbie, for you to maybe weigh in as well on your experience. But for me, what was really interesting was, all of us, we regardless of what it is, whatever the issues that we've got in, or things we've got in our personal life, we think we're the only ones going through it. And for me, what was really amazing was when I started to share my story, I found out that there were people who I've been friends with and known and been in the industry with for 20 years that were like, oh, me too. Oh, me too. And it's like, oh, wow, I'm not alone. Or, you have that mindset of, oh, I'm doing a great job of hiding this. No one knows. And I remember going to the CISO I was working for at the time and saying, hey, I wanted to just share this. Like, this is something I've recently discovered and I'm learning a little bit about it. He goes, I knew, I was just waiting for you to come and tell me because I wanted to be respectful of you. And I was like, wow, okay. Like, this is not what I expected. So it is important to not only to feel comfort and that psychological safety of, I can be open about this and I can use it as an asset. But it is about also, finding out and making sure that you as the leader are finding out what are the ways that are going to benefit your team, because you're not going to be able to apply a one size fits all approach to your team, because it's not going to work. There's not a one size fits all person. So
yeah, just Nicole, like there's no one size fits all in, what we were talking about earlier, your clients, right? The customer themselves, there's no one size fits all for them either. And understanding it is important. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Sorry.
Nicole, from your perspective, what are your kind of thoughts on all of this?
So let me start by saying I love this conversation because me too, right? So I learned about myself, right? And I think almost when you think about the work that we do in general, I don't know that too many of us are not neurodivergent, right? We've kind of developed some neurodiverse behaviors, right? So I say me too because of that and what I've learned about myself and what I learned about myself in COVID that really helped me understand what behaviors I had that were neurodivergent. And what it led me to do is get my team training on how to manage neurodivergent team members, right? I needed to get them training, and I actually leaned in a few years ago and started to hire neurodivergent people very intentionally, right? I talk about like the satisfaction I received when I had a 50-50 team of 50% women, 50% males. And then I focused on kind of diverse backgrounds, really like saying, okay, I also want diversity in background. So I hired people that were communication majors and stuff like that. And then I looked at neurodiversity and really tried to hone in on, this population and what it really meant to be a neurodiverse person, and then to lead and manage neurodiverse people, right? And what they needed. And I thought, man, this is awesome because, now there's a name for people who think differently, right? And that diversity of thought was super important and really brings a level of impact to your team, right? How you think about how you problem solve, right? And having people who didn't mind, right, doing password resets, right, and working on specific type of challenges, which I thought was very powerful. And so this really kind of helped me, and I talk about like this training doesn't just help you with managing neurodiverse team members, but just how do you manage people in general? Like, people have different learning styles. There are these nuances, right, that you have to really learn. And so it really speaks to, if you're a people-focused manager, you learn how to manage people where they are. And that means really making sure that you can manage people of different ethnic backgrounds, gender, learning styles, right? There's so many like nuances. And so bringing that to the table really helped me advance my own leadership capabilities and that of my team, and to be aware of how we can tap into those differences to unlock more innovation for the organization.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up COVID, because for me, I remember when the first kind of things, they're like, you're going to have to stay inside and not go out, and you're going to do everything virtually. I was like, wait, what? This is awesome. I was like, sweet. Everyone's going to see why this is the best way to work. And everybody was like, oh my God, remote work is amazing. Remote work is the best. And I was like, see, I've been practicing my whole life for this, and you guys now understand it. So no,
can I add
Please.
something just in there? Because
Please.
I think, Nicole, me and you could probably go back and forth on this topic quite a bit. But I love where you said managing people where they are. And I think as people leaders, it's a very important point to kind of classify. I was mentoring somebody recently that was going to have a generational diversity component coming into the team, and amazing leader in all regards, but they were hesitant and they didn't know what to do. And essentially, my mentorship to that was, my advice to that was, well, then you're going to have to skill up as a leader. Mm-hmm. And I think that's important, that it's not on them to change who they are. They have value. It's up to you to level up as a leader. And I know that might have been harsh in the moment, and I recognize how harsh of that statement that can be, but we are leaders, and we are people leaders, right? Where we went away from individual contributors, and our job is to help our team do their work and to be successful. And we can only do that by leveling up our own leadership skills to support them and do that. But I also want to put one more, just a little caveat here, because I know that the elephant in the room, a lot of the negative things that are said about diversity, equity, inclusion, diversity is not an excuse to be unprofessional. And I think that's very important. It's not an excuse to, I know that, oh, well, unqualified, et cetera, even though you look at their qualifications, you're like, no, they're qualified. They've been qualified. But it is not an excuse for unprofessionalism. So you still have to learn how to coach people through some of those rougher and harder components, to make sure that we're still being professional at the table. Because if we're expecting ourselves and we're expecting the others around us to try to come to the table and understand each other, we have to expect that from the diverse components as well, right? So I just kind of wanted to point that out there, because I know as leaders, it's hard to be like, oh, but they're this, right? We have to understand. No.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Sorry, Nicole.
I have one thing I want to say about this.
Please.
This is really important, and we didn't cover it. So we were very, I love that we are getting there, which is, and I said this before, diversity means variety. I hate that we have made it more than that, right? Because that's what it means, right? And when we want to create environments where people feel like they belong and are inclusive, right? Regardless of the terms being unpopular or whatever's happening in this popular opinion, the reality is that we're more than qualified, right? So when we talk about like diversity, variety, we're still hiring the best and the brightest, no matter what, right? And we want to make sure that our teams are inclusive, right? And that people can bring their best selves to work. I think that's super important, right? In order for people to thrive, and I think, Barbie, you brought it up, right? We can survive or we can thrive. And we want to create thriving communities of people who come to work every day to do their best work. and are the best and the brightest, and could be different, right? The differences I think we embrace instead of shun. And so that's really important. I wanted to bring that up.
Oh no, very, very important point. So as we kind of come towards the end, one of the questions that I definitely wanted to kind of address is, and have you guys, have both of you answer is, so we're sitting here now at the end, we've been talking for the last, 50 minutes about this topic, is what are some of the practical tips that you would give to other leaders that are listening here, or even to the employees who report to those leaders, when it comes to things they can and should be doing to help build that inclusive, diverse, psychologically safe environment, so that not only security, but just the business can thrive? Nicole? Yeah, or Barbie, go, please.
I know this doesn't sound like a practical tip, but one of the things that I find is most important with being a leader and to ask from your leader is to employ grace and understanding. We can go a long way when we just say, you know what, let me try to understand what's actually happening, and then to have the integrity and accountability to apologize when you need to come to the table, because there are miscommunications all the time and they happen. And that may not be as practical as you might be looking for here. But I think whenever we approach things from giving grace and with the efforts of understanding, people become more comfortable around us because they feel safer around us, because we're not doing it to, oh, I'm just trying to get more productivity. Oh, I'm not going to be understanding. Oh, I'm going to this is going to be the lashes that you're going to feel this week. It is, I don't know. It's a feeling you get when you're with somebody, when they understand, or they're at least trying to understand, versus immediately thinking the negative out of you or your actions.
I think what's important is authenticity and empathy, right? In today's age where there's just a soundbite is a soundbite, right? 150 words is 150 words, but that's not the whole story, right? So being empathetic, assuming positive intent, and developing the right relationships to seek to understand is going to be really important today, because it is easy to be on the side of offense and make up fake news. So it's really important as a leader that we always dig into what's true, right, and what's right, and we seek to understand where maybe and give people the benefit of the doubt, right? I think right now there's a lot going on, and we all want to come to work, and we all want to be and do our work, and we all, I think, really come to work to do the best work. And so making environments conducive for that is going to be really important. I still believe in diverse slates. I think in order to hire the right people, you have to make sure you have everybody included, right? Inclusivity is important. And so I'm still a proponent of that. And I think about like my career and my journey to this seat. It was not easy. It was rough. But I will talk and say that there were people who were very influential and really helped me through. And those allies are still necessary today. Be an ally, seek to understand, and be an empathetic leader is the advice I would give.
Yeah. And you both make really great points. And I love, Nicole, that you said, assume positive intent. That was something that the CISO I worked for in my last company, Sean Bowen, would regularly say to us, as his direct reports, is assume positive intent. And it's hard to do that. It sounds easy. It's like, oh, well, yeah, but in the moment, it's very hard to do, but it's so important, because at the end of the day, and I think, Barbie, you made this point early on, is no one is trying to come in and go and like be unsecure. Everyone wants to like increase maintain the security of the organization. We make it sometimes difficult. We add friction sometimes. We assume, oh, they're just out to, to make my job harder, and therefore we push back. And that's I think the shift that we've seen over the last number of years, from shifting from that traditional department of no to the department of how do we do it securely, is a really important thing, and shows that we are trying to actually build this positive intent, because and operate from positive intent. So as we're getting to the end, I want to give both of you a chance for any last minute thoughts. Any are you hiring, and then any thing about how people can learn more or connect with you. So Barbie, we'll start with you.
Yeah, sure. I am actually hiring for a GRC analyst right now. And I will be hiring at some point for a privacy analyst. I do have one question that I saw come in. It was, how do you measure the InfoSec culture? And I think, there's metrics that you can go along, and you can do the phishing click rates, and you can do all these different security awareness culture. And, there's tools out there that help you through that. But I think at the end of the day, how you can really measure the InfoSec culture is, will people come to you and talk to you? Do they engage with you and see you as somebody that can help you, that can help them, and that you can consult for them for decisions being made? Like, that is number one for me. If people don't feel comfortable with coming to me and asking questions, I have a crap culture. Like, it's just flat across the board. Because they're obviously not telling me things. There are obviously things that are going on that we likely are not secure on. And so if you have an open door policy, one of my warm temperature, non-qualitative ways of being able to identify how I measure InfoSec culture is, will you have a conversation with me, and is it honest? So
that's a great, great
I know that was like a last minute question, or it came in pretty early in the thread. So I wanted to kind of address that. And I think it was probably a good way for me to sign that out as well.
No,
you can get in touch with me.
Great points. And Nicole.
Yeah, so not hiring right now, but to answer that question about how do you measure culture, I think engagement, right? So I just had a way of looking at engagement in, setting up these champion groups and seeing how much of engagement we had, and then measuring that engagement. And you're right. I think Barbie makes a huge point, and that is, how many people will come to you and have a conversation, or to any of your leaders and have a conversation, right? And so it's not a matter, it's not a punitive thing, but it's more of, are they engaged? Do they see cyber as important? And does that increase over time, right? Which increases engagement. You'd be surprised. I've had some really engaged cultures where we had great conversation, and we were bringing content to them pretty consistently, and they were consuming it, and they were learning as much as possible, right? I think it's also speaks to, do you belong to a learning organization and a learning culture too, right? Because that increases engagement. And that's a culture where people want to learn as much as possible about cyber, and they're open to the conversations, I think is really important. So.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. Thank you, Barbie. Thank you, Nicole. Thank you, everyone, for being here today. This has been a really great conversation. We really appreciate both of you being involved. Thank all of you who have attended and were active in the chat. If you want to learn more about the Cyber Risk Collaborative, cyberriskcollaborative.com. Reach out to myself, anyone on the team, Perfect Shaw, Melissa Warford, Christian Charsky, Tom Ward. We look forward to seeing you again very soon. We've got some events next week as well, as well as in the coming weeks. Please check out your weekly member update for more of those. And again, thank you both for being here. Thank you all for attending, and have a great rest of your day, great rest of your week, and a great upcoming weekend.